Hello there, parents. I'm here today as a teen coach. My name is Dr. Carla Couturier. I also double as an assistant principal and associate professor. So what I wanted to share with you today, regardless of what grade your child is in, could be high school, could be middle school, but some ways to navigate the school. So for parents, the first thing I would do of the 6 things that I'm about to share with you is to use all available resources. So before you pick up the phone and before you stop in the school, check the website. Most schools spend a lot of time on their websites uploading all types of information. I know that we do, and I know it should be a one-stop shop for parents. With that being said, all the information I'm going to give you may or may not be exactly the same at your school, but it gives you a good general idea. So as school staff, we continuously send home reminders. So they could be via email, via phone, they come through text messages. So yes, it may get a little bit annoying that you receive these messages all the time, but on the other hand, that's how you're getting the information from us. So with a large school, it can be, obviously very time consuming to make individual calls. And that's why we have these systems and processes in place to get all information out to parents. And it's something that we take very seriously. And it's something that we want to do to clearly communicate to you so we are all on the same page, because we are a team. And coming to you from a coach's point of view, this alleviates a lot of questions, concerns, anxiety that you and your team may have. And again, if you ever need assistance, you can definitely reach out and I can help you navigate all of the things I'm going to talk about today. Another thing is to keep the lines of communication open. So with that being said, if you have a concern that comes up throughout the school year, the first thing you want to do is, 1, speak with your child. Obviously, probably they came to you about the problem, but let's say you found the problem with their grades or something like that. Point being, you want to keep the lines of communication open with your child, but also with the school. So always start with your child, and you want to teach them those self-advocacy skills. So as high schoolers, and sometimes even middle schoolers, we can start with them. You want to get them prepared so that they can handle these situations on their own. They're not always going to have a teacher that they click with. They're not always going to love the subject matter that is being taught. But the point is as they grow older and as they go into college and into their careers, they're going to need these skills to communicate with people they really get along with, which is probably easy for them. But if they have concerns with people that, they don't necessarily click with, a lot of times kids, maybe shy away and don't advocate for themselves. And as parents, I understand a lot of times you want to come in and fix a situation and, just move on or, figure it out yourself. It's a lot easier that way. But then where does that leave the child? So the child really needs to, garner those skills to advocate for themselves. So if they can, see a teacher after school, see a teacher after class, maybe before school, whenever the teacher has a little bit of one-on-one time, that's the best time. If you're having trouble getting a hold of the teacher, maybe you do need to intervene and just send an email or make a quick call indicating that your child has something they would like to talk about and would like to, discuss. Maybe it's a test grade, maybe it's a something they said to them that didn't, land right with them, whatever the case may be. So you may have to step in, and that is totally fine, but you don't want to do that before you allow your child the opportunity to handle this themselves. And if they're stressing about it or they're concerned or they don't know what to say, you can definitely role play it with them. You can go over what, the bullet points of what they want to say, and kind of give them those skills so they feel more confident communicating with that teacher. If that isn't, in your child's wheelhouse yet, maybe you need to just facilitate a phone call with the teacher, with the 3 of you, and let the child talk, feel supported by you, and also be able to clearly communicate to that teacher. So there's definitely a lot of ways to handle it, but I would definitely have the child self-advocate first off and teach them those skills to keep that open communication with the teacher. And I would start that on day 1 before there even is a problem. But if a problem does arise, this is very, very helpful. When your child is discussing the situation with you, I would be very objective and listen. So a lot of times, again, like I said, we want to just go and we want to fix it. We want to get angry right away. We want to, blame the teacher and say, oh, this and this and this might have happened. Well, honestly, a lot of times there is a lot of truth to what the child says, but there also is a lot of truth to what the teacher says. So we have to kind of, look at both sides of the story. And I understand there are times when there are extreme situations and, there's bullying involved and there's, there's a fight or there's something, super, major that might occur. And understandably, that's not a place where you're going to want to kind of, just hang back and let it happen. But we're talking about situations here that, your child can truly handle. And, maybe it's, like I said, it's something about their attendance or their grades or, maybe there was some kind of way that the teacher responded when they answered a question. So with that being said, listening to your child, keep an open mind, understand that there is another side to the story. So before we go to blame the teacher or even the child, let's kind of look at the situation objectively with an open mind. Now, if you've gotten to the point where you've exhausted the resources of the website, of the phone calls, of the flyer sent home, of actually communicating with the teacher, let's just say the teacher is unavailable or you're not getting a response that you feel is appropriate, then you want to reach out a little bit further and you want to reach out to the school counselors and administration. And please know that when you do that, it is the best to have a collaborative conversation with all parties involved. So a lot of times I'll have parents call me, we set up a meeting and the student doesn't show. Well, if the student isn't there, it indicates a couple different things. One, does the student think this is important? Or two, is the student not able to even, explain the situation in front of the teacher with their parent there? Or three, does the parent just think, they're going to fix it and it has not, and the child doesn't need to be there. But again, the reason why we want to have everyone involved is we want everyone on the same page. Two, we want to make sure that, everything is clearly communicated with everyone there. So if the child is saying one thing at home, coming to school and saying another thing, or the teacher is, trying to explain to me what happened, but then they're, explaining to the parent, and it can get really messy. So in order to keep everything all on the same page, everyone in clear communication, it's best to sit down all together. And when we sit down, yes, I'm an administrator, but honestly, when I'm having these types of conversations, one-on-one with a parent, one-on-one with a teacher, all together as a whole group, or just with the student, but again, with the whole group involved, I'm coaching. So I'm coaching everyone through the situation, and I'm remembering, and parents, you need to remember this too, that everyone sitting in that room or sitting on that Zoom call or whatever it might be, or on that phone call, is there for your child and is there to best support them. So you have to stay open and objective and go in with an open mind. So before you attend that meeting, the best thing to do for your child and for you is to get in a really good state and realize that, the purpose of you coming into school that day or going on that phone call is really to get to the bottom of the situation, for us to problem solve together, and for us to figure out what's the best solution for your child. So you want to go in there with like a solutions-based mindset. Again, things may come up in that meeting that don't sit right with you, that you feel are unfair, and those are all feelings that you rightfully can have, should have, but don't want to act on. You want to speak about them if you are feeling, oh, hey, I really, even though Mrs. So-and-so just stated that this and this and this and this happened, I really still feel that, she's not clearly understanding my child. It is okay to voice your opinion, but you want to come from a place of solutions, of objective, and not from blame and, negative emotion. Because then the whole conference or the whole meeting or the whole discussion kind of turns in a different direction. And again, we're here as a team. We're here to work this out together. And that's again why I come from I put my, coaching hat on in those situations to make sure that everybody there is able to, best represent themselves as well as the student involved. So you want to prepare yourself also that you may not always get exactly what you want, but you will get what your child needs. So I'm going to say that again. You may not always get what you want, but you may get what your child needs. And there's many situations where a student wants to come right out of a class. That's the only answer. A parent wants to take the kid out of that class. It could be there was one instance that happened that they didn't like. It could be there was one grade they didn't like. It also could be that something has been going on for months, but they have not voiced that to anyone. So that's another thing. Even though you think a situation may be small, address it with your child, have your child address it with the teacher, and if you need to, move to a higher level, but address these situations sooner rather than later. Because a lot of times something happens in October, and then if we're not finding out about it till February, this thing has been festering for months. And then of course you're at that point where you're like, I gotta get my child out of this class. So if something small happens, it's better to address it right away. Don't brush it under the rug, don't address it. And hopefully, and most times, it can be figured out with very painlessly, very painlessly. But it becomes very painful when this is something that carries on. And then when you get later in the year, are you really going to move your child out of a class and then have them start another class and they have no background knowledge? They have not, been with that teacher the whole year. They do not know what's going on. And a lot of times they have to switch to a different subject and on and on and on. And it definitely shakes up their whole schedule. So from a coaching standpoint, I would say it's best if there's anything that kind of in your gut or in your child's gut that is not right, to address it sooner rather than later. And I want to kind of go over some situations of your teen may be struggling in a class. And if that is the case, you want to make sure that before that happens, the year before, that you take a really good look at the courses that they're picking, that you take the opportunity to sit down with a school counselor to map out that year, but actually map out their 4 years and have a goal in mind and have, what does your child ultimately want to do? What is their goal? Do they want to go to college? Do they want to go into a career? Or do they not know? And if they do not know, that's fine. We're not putting pressure on kids. We just want to make sure that we are on the right track. Now, with that being said, there can always be a class that, maybe your child got into and they're in over their head. Again, sooner rather than later. So in those very first weeks of school, you want to make sure that you're discussing with your child, how is school, every single night, right at the beginning. Because in the very beginning, it is a lot easier to change a class for your child than it is later in the year. And it's better to just change it right away if it needs to be changed, or address whatever the concern is and fix it right there. So for example, a lot of kids get into an AP class. It's their first AP class. Maybe it's their freshman year. They fail tests. But AP tests are different than your average test. Your child may have gotten hundreds and 90s on all their tests up until that point, but they're getting 60s on AP tests. And that is okay, and that is expected. And so you want to make sure before you panic and want to pull the student out of the class, you talk to the teacher, because the class averages tend to be lower in AP classes on tests. Teachers account for that in their grade book and so on and so forth. So there's some things that you may be aware of, there's some things that you may not be aware of, and it may not be that your child is failing, it just may be they are right where they're supposed to be. Another thing that comes up a lot is self-care. So when parents come in to school, and as a coach, self-care is number one. Your child should be feeling good, they should be eating healthily, they should be engaging in activities socially, they should have a manageable workload from school, have a great family life, be happy, all of the above, of course. So that's the ideal, and that's what we want for every child. And a lot of times a couple different situations arise. Sometimes there are students that are working, and they're working and they're working and they're working, and they're not prioritizing school at all. And they don't want to make an adjustment to their work schedule. Or they're playing sort of travel sport, and they don't want to make an adjustment to their schedule. So before a child is signing up for a lot of high-level classes and all this pressure, they have to make sure, the key here is make sure that their lives are balanced. So you kind of have to weigh that out as to where the priority is going to be. And so at that kind of, during that kind of discussion, parents and teens have to realize they may have to make some adjustments to their outside lives in order to be successful at school. Does this have to be forever? By no means. So maybe there's a teen that's working, 20 hours a week and going to school. Well, maybe they need to cut their hours. Maybe they just need to work 10 hours a week until they can balance their time, manage it, organize, and get back on track. So it doesn't have to be forever, but you have to go in with an open mind, considering that you may need to make some adjustments and some sacrifices, because teenagers do, of course, like money, like everyone does. And there may be other reasons why teens are working, and that is understood. But truly, school is their job at this point. It is very important for them to, get that high school diploma, to move forward with their life after high school. A lot of times, teens take a lot of high-level classes. They become overwhelmed. They have a lot of anxiety, and we want to honor the fact that they may need to make adjustments. It may need to be a class change, but also within that schedule, you have to ensure that you are balancing your child's schedule. So maybe they do need to sign up for yoga class, which does not bump up their GPA, but gives them some time throughout the school week to decompress, to not have to be, reading, writing, and like stressing. They need that release, and it may come within the school day. Another thing that happens is there are students that are very unmotivated, very disengaged, failing, not really doing any homework. And then when we look at them, when we talk to them, when we question them, they're very, very smart. And a lot of times what happens is these students are bored. They're in a class where they know what's going on already, or, have similar knowledge to this. It's too easy, so they just decide to not do anything. So it is okay for your child to take one or two higher level classes to challenge themselves, to push themselves. And yes, they may have a little bit more homework, but that is going to engage them and keep them on track, keep them busy, keep them focused, keep them engaged. So that is a really good thing. So I hope I gave you some tips that you could use in this upcoming school year. I went over a couple, scenarios that I tend to see quite often, but make sure that you are giving your child the skills and the tools and the autonomy to handle situations on their own. If you need help with that, I can definitely coach you through that, and I can coach your team through that. And with that being said, keep those lines of communication open with school, and go in there with a positive mindset and realize that the team is there as a collective to do what's best for your child. Thank you.